We're through 13 weeks in the NFL season, and well, half of your teams are very, very bad. So I need to give you a reason to keep watching for the rest of the year and something to be excited about. So this is Mullet's 3-round mock draft, version 4. We start with the Houston Texans, who, well, they're just god-awful, and will have the number 1 pick, which they do in this little exercise. They also have another first-round pick, the first pick in the second and third rounds, and an extra third-rounder. With that first pick, there's only one thing they can take, which is a quarterback. Davis Mills has been a disaster, and Kyle Allen was even worse. My number 1 quarterback in this class, Alabama quarterback Bryce Young, who I have them taking at number 1. If he was 2 inches bigger, we would talk about it, but about him like Trevor Lawrence and Andrew Luck, he's not, and we don't. But he is clearly the best quarterback in this class to me. With their other 4 picks, at 13, Michael Mayer, the tight end out of Notre Dame, which gives him the high-end weapon that will allow him to develop 3-down blocking tight end, much in the Rob Gronkowski, Pat Freiermuth mold. Felix Anadike Uzama at number 32, edge out of Kansas State, who you saw in the Big 12 title game is very impactful. That's the big thing for the Houston Texans. You have to add talent. You have to add players, and that's what they do. I went basically best player available on every pick. 2 picks in the third round. Number 64, Garrett Williams, the cornerback out of Syracuse. He would have easily been a second-round pick had he not gotten hurt earlier in the season. Good value here at number 64. And then at 78, linebacker DeMarvion Overshown from Texas. Raw, very hyper-talented. Not exactly sure what position he plays, but could come into the Houston Texans right away and give them a little spark on the defense. With the second pick in our 3-round mock draft here, the Chicago Bears, who have found their franchise quarterback in Justin Fields, who can't throw. But that's another story for another day. So at number 2, I obviously don't have them taking quarterback. If I was Chicago, I would be looking to move Fields and to take Will Levis here, but I'm not the Chicago Bears. At number 2, Will Anderson Jr., the edge out of Alabama. This kid's Khalil Mack, Von Miller level impactful, hyper talented, comes in and gives you that pass rush threat right away that will allow Justin Fields and his ability to run. The two things obviously they work in concert, if not in tandem. I like Will Anderson. The penalties and things at Alabama don't bother me that much. He's just that good. At 56, their second-round pick, Darnell Wright, the offensive tackle out of Tennessee, just adds another piece. I know you've got Tevin Jenkins that you drafted out of Oklahoma State. He's striking me as a guard. Alex Leatherwood that you're trying to rehab from the Raiders. And then the one that I actually like, Braxton Jones, that you took out of Southern Utah last year. Number 65, your third-round pick, Eli Ricks, the corner out of Alabama. That's just a high-end talent, which is what the Bears need. They have a lack of talent. It shows. And so you don't always go best player available, but if it's a best player available that also helps fill a need, then that's what you do. At number 3, the Seattle Seahawks, who have the Denver Broncos pick after the greatest awful trade since Herschel Walker. At number 3, you just take the best player available, and that's clearly, to me, Jalen Carter, the defensive tackle out of Georgia. He may end up being the best defensive player off that Georgia 2021 National Championship defense. It just strikes me Aaron Donald level impactful. That's how good he can be right away. And this makes the Russell Wilson trade officially the worst trade in NFL history and should get George Paton fired. At number 20, their second first-round pick, Trenton Simpson, linebacker out of Clemson. This kid's just hyper mobile. I think he fits in that defense really nicely, very malleable. Some people like Drew Sanders better. Drew Sanders is really tall, which to me tells me that he's going to be kind of scheme dependent. How many 6'5" linebackers have you seen? Now, how many of those have you seen with the Seattle Seahawks? There's a reason for that. Number 20, Trenton Simpson. 35, their second-round pick, Rashee Rice, a wide receiver out of SMU. I've seen him as high as the middle of the first round. I don't have him that high. I think he's going to need to learn to do things as a receiver as opposed to just somebody that's really electric with the ball in his hands. Number 53, Derek Hall, the edge out of Auburn. Strikes me as a player that can come in as a situational pass rusher right off the jump, be impactful, and get into that rotation with Seattle. And then number 84, their third-round pick, Malachi Moore, the safety out of Alabama. Comes in. I don't know that he's going to get any better, but he is a player that can come into your defense right away, really have an impact, and would be a nice pick for the Seattle Seahawks in the third round. The Detroit Lions pick at 4, which that doesn't surprise anyone. What does surprise people is that pick belongs to the Los Angeles Rams, the reigning Super Bowl champions. Look, the Lions can take a swing here. I don't feel like they have to take a quarterback. Jared Goff is good enough to get them through. It may never be great, but look at the coach. This is how Dan Campbell wants to play. He wants to be able to run the ball with formerly fat Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Doug. And so at number 4, I'm taking a swing with a guy that every evaluator I talk to screams about the talent of Tyree Wilson, defensive lineman out of Texas Tech. You can just play him all over the place. He strikes me as somebody that Dan Campbell would fall in love with. I think he's going to test really well, and you can take that swing when you have an extra top 5 pick like the Lions do. Their second first-rounder, Cam Smith, number 15, cornerback out of South Carolina. I had a couple options here. This was not the only corner that I could have taken. Christian Gonzalez was still on the board. I feel like Cam Smith is the kind of guy that fits with Aaron Glenn, Dan Campbell, and it would be their preference if I don't actually have him rated higher than Christian Gonzalez. 45, Andre Carter II, the edge from Army. An Army edge rusher strikes me as exactly the kind of player that Dan Campbell wants on this team. Very disciplined, good pass rusher. Will be the first drafted player in the first 2 days, well, first 3 rounds, for Army since the 60s. This kid's really talented. Maybe not the senior year you expected, but still really high on a lot of teams' boards. At 61, A.T. Perry, wide receiver out of Wake Forest. Big-bodied, good hands. Maybe need to teach him the route tree, which is why you can get him at the back end of the second round, but would be an immediate piece on the opposite side of Amon-Ra St. Brown. And at 76, you take a swing at a quarterback with Jaron Hall, quarterback out of BYU, that a lot of people are very high on. I like him. I'm in like with him, not in love with him. So I can't say that he's my favorite quarterback, but that's why you can get him in the third round. At number 5, the Philadelphia Eagles with the third pick in the top 5 that was dealt. The New Orleans Saints pick at number 5. I have them taking Miles Murphy, the edge from Clemson. This kid comes in right away and has an impact. In time would be the Brandon Graham replacement. You mix him with Hassan Reddick. You mix him with Josh Sweat. And this is a luxury pick for a Philadelphia team that may be the best team in the NFL right now. At number 31 with their first-round pick, Antonio Johnson, the safety out of Texas A&M. Maybe a little bit of a hat on a hat with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. If they don't bring him back, then that would make this more likely, but I actually think you could play them together. Both can play in the slot. Johnson is bigger. I actually think that would push Chauncey Gardner-Johnson into the slot and would make that defense even more formidable. With their second-round pick at 63, Jared Patterson, interior offensive lineman from Notre Dame. It's a depth piece. They took Cam Jurgens out of Nebraska last year. They already have Landon Dickerson. This line is very, very good. But when you have a quarterback like Jalen Hurts, you cannot have enough offensive linemen. And at some point, Jason Kelsey is going to stop playing, and Jared Patterson would slide into one of those guard or even the center spot. At 95, Israel Abanikanda, running back out of Pittsburgh. Really high in tape on this kid, but you got to remember who he's playing against. He's also a little older. So just a rotational piece. Philadelphia loves having multiple running backs, and Abanikanda would be one of those. At number 6, the Carolina Panthers. I'll give you one guess what position we're going here, and I'll give you one guess who it is. At number 6, Will Levis, quarterback out of Kentucky. I know a lot of people don't like this kid as much as I do and are not as high on what he can do. He strikes me as a Josh Allen type of the offensive line wasn't good. He lost a lot of his weapons going into his senior year, and that made him look like less of a prospect when he's not. He's big-bodied. He can run. He's a very modern-day NFL quarterback. At number 6, the Carolina Panthers, Will Levis out of Kentucky. At 39, Devin Achane, the running back out of Texas A&M, gives them that Christian McCaffrey type of player, more mobile, good pass catcher, can do a lot of things in the passing game that will be attractive with Will Levis. You've already got DJ Moore. Got a player I really like in Shi Smith and Terrace Marshall. This is just another weapon to help him develop. At number 58, Another Pittsburgh guy, Kalijah Kancey, the defensive tackle, that I genuinely think has Aaron Donald level high side. I'm not telling you he's going to be that good. I think he can be that good. ACC Defensive Player of the Year, and the tape just jumps when you watch Kalijah Kancey. And then with their third-round pick, 89, Caillou Blue Kelly, the cornerback out of Stanford, developmental piece. I'm not saying that's one of their biggest needs, but as time goes on, players do get expensive. I still can't believe Dante Jackson is employed in the NFL, and he would be a nice replacement a year or two down the line. At number 7, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Look, they need an offensive lineman. I get it. At 7, I feel like there's a player I can get here that I can't get anywhere else that will help Trevor Lawrence continue to develop into the player that we think he's going to be. And I feel like I can address that lineman spot at 37. So at number 7, I take wide receiver Quentin Johnston out of TCU. My comp on him on the high side is Julio Jones. You put that with Trevor Lawrence, and I really feel like you've got something. You have him, you got Christian Kirk, Travis Etienne out of the backfield. Now you have the weapons to really see what it is that Trevor Lawrence can do, and you count less on Zay Jones, who's been averaging double-digit targets, which that's just too much for a mediocre receiver. Zay and Marvin Jones are very similar in talent, not necessarily talent type, but in talent level, and that's not good enough for a 2 and 3 for a quarterback that you expect to be your franchise guy. At 37, Andrew Voorhees, the interior offensive lineman from USC. I actually think he can play tackle in the league. I don't think he's stuck being just a guard, but he would probably come into the league as a guard, and maybe you develop him over time. He's just a very versatile player, a kid that I'm really high on. And at 71, Travius Hodges-Tomlinson, the corner out of TCU. You will see him in the college football playoff. I guarantee you he will make a play in that game with Georgia that will show you the talent that I'm talking about. Really good at playing the ball. Just not going to – he's going to be very scheme specific. Let's put it that way. Number 8, the Arizona Cardinals. Look, this team's going to have a different coach. It may be Sean Payton. I frankly hope it's not, because I hope Sean Payton goes to the Los Angeles Chargers. The defense is a disaster area. You've wasted a lot of draft capital there and not gotten a ton for it. So I feel like you need a guy that's almost can't miss. So at number 8, I'm taking one of those. Joey Porter Jr., the cornerback out of Penn State. He's got the same disposition that his dad did. He's just he's a bulldog. Really good against the run, big physical corner. And I feel like he and Byron Murphy would be enough to prop that secondary up no matter what their defensive scheme looks like. At 38 with their second-round pick, kid that I'm very high on. I actually think he's better than his brother. It's B.J. Ojulari, the edge out of LSU. His brother Aziz plays for the New York Giants. I think B.J. can be the better of the two. It might just take a little bit of time, and he may be scheme-specific. At 69, a position that I've said the Cardinals needed for years, and now I fully believe you're seeing it. Blake Corum, the running back out of Michigan. Talented kid. I can't tell you that he's ever going to be a bell cow running back, but I think he can be a part of a committee in the league. And at 96, Luke Musgrave, the tight end out of Oregon State, a kid that I am really high on. And I feel like the industry is going to catch up to me before we get too far into this. At number 9, the Indianapolis Colts. You tried it. Let's see. You tried it with Matt Ryan. You tried it with Phillip Rivers. You tried it with Carson Wentz. I bet this is a quarterback. At number 9, the happiest team in the NFL draft, the Indianapolis Colts take C.J. Stroud, the quarterback out of Ohio State. I'm a little shocked he fell this far, but I just keep hearing negative things about him that make me a little nervous as to where he projects. He's really thin. You have the worry about the weapons that he's had there. Has he developed as a passer? And I can't answer those offhand. I think he will be a good player in this league. Maybe never great, but I will tell you he will be better than Matt Ryan. Played day one and just deal with the Matt Ryan contract. I don't know why you traded for it in the first place. With their second-round pick at number 40, Cedric Tillman, the wide receiver out of Tennessee, gives you another piece. Him, Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, Paris Campbell. And Jelani Woods, the tight end with Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. That mixed with that line, I feel like that's an offense that can play at a high level right away, score, and once you get the defense back to full health, Shaquille Leonard's injury has really been a pain in the ass for the Indianapolis Colts. And a mixture of these players, I think, would get them right back into contention in the AFC South with the right coach. At 81, a player that should not have fallen this far, Emmanuel Forbes, cornerback out of Mississippi State. I think he's a day one plug and play. I said the same thing about his teammate Martin Emerson last year, and, well, weird. I was right. Number 10, the Atlanta Falcons. I kind of want to throw them a quarterback, but they're going to try this with Desmond Ridder or Marcus Mariota or whatever the case may be. So there's a player sitting on the board that shouldn't be there that's very talented at a position they've needed forever. At number 10, Brian Breeze, defensive tackle out of Clemson. This kid's got an incredible story. Gained 45 pounds of water weight earlier this year. Sister passed away earlier this year. Great kid, great talent. It, to me, is a no doubt top 10 pick. It should not be here at 10, and the Atlanta Falcons would be very happy to scoop him up. At 42, John Michael Schmitz, interior offensive lineman from Minnesota. One of the highest graded centers I've ever had, but he can also play guard. Just a very malleable piece, very modern NFL type of player, and I think will be a good second-day selection, would be a nice fit here for the Atlanta Falcons. And at number 73, Zach Charbonnet, the running back out of UCLA. Not a lot to him, but as we've seen, Atlanta really loves mediocre running backs. All right, there's the top 10 on the screen. 10 we've already done, and we keep going with the Green Bay Packers. Look, they've already taken the wide receivers. They have enough young receivers. I can't take another receiver here. But the best offensive lineman on the board is still there. So at number 11, Peter Skoronski, offensive tackle from Northwestern. I do think he can play offensive tackle in this league. They've shown with Elgton Jenkins and Zach Tom last year, they like malleable pieces. That's exactly what he is. I think he would be a day one plug and play for David Bakhtiari, who at this point you just can't trust. And that has been a big problem for the Green Bay Packers this year. At 41, Darnell Washington, the tight end from Georgia, that to me is a mirror image of a player they've had on this team for quite some time in Mercedes Lewis. And he would, to me, would be a great replacement there. He's the second best tight end in this class, with Eric All having the injury and not being able to declare. At 74, I do add them a receiver in Marvin Mims from Oklahoma. I don't know that he has a great high side, but I think he has a very safe floor. Would be a player that I think probably becomes what Amari Rodgers was supposed to be for the Green Bay Packers. At 12, the Las Vegas Raiders. A lot of people think they should take quarterback. I'm not one of them. Of all their problems this year, Derek Carr is not one. But the big problem is they need a receiver. They need another weapon, because you can't count on Darren Waller, who's gone more often than he's on the field. Hunter Renfrow hasn't fit into this system the way that we thought he would. So at number 12, Jordan Addison, wide receiver out of USC. That's a big play threat that will take some of the coverage off Devontae Adams and allow that offense to move along at the pace that it's supposed to. 46, Clark Phillips III, cornerback out of Utah. This allows Ellis Hobbs to play on the outside. I know a lot of people think he's markedly better on the inside. I'm not as sure of that. I just feel like they're not as malleable in Patrick Graham's defense as they should be. Clark Phillips is the best slot corner in this draft and would be a great value at 46. At number 77, Zach Evans, running back out of Mississippi. I like Josh Jacobs a lot, and I think they're going to bring him back. I like Zamir White, but he does one thing, which is run between the guards. They need a home run hitter running back that can catch passes, which is exactly what I think Zach Evans, much in the James White role back in the Josh McDaniels days in New England. Zach Evans, running back out of Ole Miss. Skipping down to number 14 with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh has two huge needs. Offensive tackle, because Dan Moore is a guard. I feel like you can get a quality tackle at the beginning of the second round. There is a player here. I know some of the tape hasn't been great, but the raw on him is phenomenal. 14, Keely Ringo, cornerback out of Georgia. I feel like if anybody can coach him up to be the player that he is too afraid of getting beat over the top, and he doesn't use his body frame the way that, but the good is really good. And I think perfect fit for him would be number 14 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. At 33, with the Chicago Bears pick they got for Chase Claypool, which I still can't say without laughing. Anton Harrison, the offensive tackle out of Oklahoma. Big, nasty Pittsburgh Steeler type of player. And I feel like he could come in and start on the left side immediately and would allow the reshuffling of the deck for that offensive line to use the pieces it has to improve. 44, their second-round pick, Siaki Ika, gigantic nose tackle from Baylor. He does not do anything but stop the run. Very limited ability to rush the passer in the NFL to me, but he fits that Pittsburgh Steelers defense, would really help them against the run, and would be a plug-and-play first two-down defensive tackle for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Number one thing that I love forecasting to Pittsburgh, replacing a headache receiver with a third-round receiver. Raheem Jarrett, wide receiver out of Maryland. I once famously said about Stephon Diggs, I cannot figure out why evaluators in the NFL can't see what I see in this kid. I'm saying the same thing about Raheem Jarrett and Dante Demas. I think they will both be players in this league, and Pittsburgh strikes me as the type of team that will see the talent and take him at number 75. Skipping down to 16 with the Los Angeles Chargers. At 16, look, this season's been bad. I think you're going to have a new coach, Sean Payton. And the best way to develop Justin Herbert, who his development has stalled, the best way to develop him is to give him a piece that I've been screaming for years, and this is the best one on the board by a mile. At 16, Bijan Robinson, running back out of Texas. Look, I like Austin Eckler. I always have. But he's not a running back. He's a weapon. He's really good in the slot. He's a really good receiver. He's not really good between the tackles. And now the problem I see with the Chargers is they live by two facets that have always been problematic to me. If you can't run and you can't stop the run, it's very rare that you're going to be any good. And that's where the Chargers are. So I give them the highest rated running back I've had since Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson out of Texas. At 48, their second round pick, Devin Witherspoon, the corner out of Illinois, player I really like, physical. I think he would be nice on the opposite side of J.C. Jackson, allow Asante Samuel to play in the slot, improve that secondary, and hopefully make that defense to where it can play dead in a Western. Same thing that they're picking the third round, number 79, K.J. Henry, the edge out of Clemson. I could argue he's been the most consistent player on that defense for Clemson. He just doesn't have the tremendous high side, which is the reason you can get him here, where many of his teammates went in the first round. At 17, the New England Patriots. Look, Bill loves to take players too high, and I think that's exactly what he would do here at 17 with Jackson Smith-Njigba. The fact he opted out of the playoff has bothered me. It's bothered a lot of people. There are teams in the NFL that have a third-round grade on this kid. But the raw talent is certainly there and would give Mac Jones or Bailey Zapp or whoever the quarterback New England's going to be the weapon to play with that I feel like they have needed for a long time. New England receivers is a lot like my dating record before I met my wife. It's a whole slew of threes. There are no twos, and there sure as hell isn't a one. Jackson Smith-Njigba might be able to be that one and would be a good pick at 17 for the New England Patriots. At 47, Nolan Smith, the edge from Georgia. There's not a ton of high side. This is a lot like Nakobe Dean last year. He got hurt. He's missed the end of the year, and there may be just not a ton of tread left on those tires. But the tape is intoxicating, and in the right system as a rotational piece, I think he could have a long career in the NFL and would be a perfect fit with the New England Patriots. Their third-round pick at number 70, Blake Freeland, the offensive tackle from BYU. That line has been a problem. The only problem is that the first two picks that New England had both fall into situations where there's not a player that fits what they do really nicely. I feel like Blake Freeland would be nice value in the third round and potentially a plug-and-play starter. Number 18, the Washington Commanders. The defense has been shockingly better than I thought, and the offense has been even more shockingly better than I thought. Taylor Heineke is the guy. For whatever reason, over the course of the last 3 years, the best tape you see from Washington is when he is on the field. So leave the offense the hell alone. But you do need a dog at corner, and at 18, that's what I give them, with Christian Gonzalez, the corner out of Oregon. This again started at Colorado, really screamed up draft boards this year with some high-level tape. Yes, it's in the Pac-12. I understand that can be a little skewing, but it's not enough for me to worry about it. I still think he's the second or third best corner in this class and would fit nicely in that Jack Del Rio, Ron Rivera system. Much the same way I feel about their pick at number 49, Drew Sanders, the linebacker out of Arkansas. Some people think he's the number one linebacker in his class. I don't believe that. He came on really hot and then seemed to hit kind of a wall, and he's very, very tall. Look, there can be good tall linebackers. That's not what I'm saying. There just haven't been a ton of them, and I feel like he's going to be more of a 2 next to a Jamin Davis, allow him to do, and Cole Holcomb and the different players that they played in that system. I think he's a nice piece that can come in and play right away. Washington's in a bit of a window. The team's pretty good, but the team's also reasonably old. So I want players that can play right away, and that's what Christian Gonzalez and Drew Sanders would give me. Now, from a team that's in a window to a team whose window has slammed shut, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. At 19, you have one very prevailing need, and it's at quarterback if there's no Tom Brady. Problem is that there's nobody there. Now, you can shoehorn a player all you want to. I think you're better doing that in the second round, which I'll get to in a second. But no matter who the quarterback is, you need a better left tackle than Donovan Smith. And so at 19, Paris Johnson Jr., offensive tackle out of Ohio State. He's a plug-and-play starter off the jump. The tape has been really good at Ohio State. I just don't know that he has the ceiling. I can't tell you he's ever going to be an all-pro or a Pro Bowler or anything like that, but I do think he's a 10-year starter at left tackle and would be an improvement over what they currently have. Number 50, Tanner McKee, quarterback out of Stanford. This kid is 25 years old, I believe. Went on an LDS mission. His best tape has been later in his career, which always scares me. It scared me with Kenny Pickett. It scared me with a slew of other guys. But I do think if you get into a bind and there is no Jimmy Garoppolo or anybody like that that can come in and take this job, Tanner McKee's a kid that could come in and start right away. High side's probably the good of Davis Mills. Low side is, well, not good, but you're taking a shot in the middle of the second round, so you know that risk is there. With their third round pick, a player that I am super high on, and I feel like he's not going to get the flowers he deserves. Habakkuk Baldonado, edge rusher from Pittsburgh. It's a really good defense. They will actually have 3 defensive linemen selected in this draft, and Baldonado is the one that I think has the highest upside. He also has the lowest floor. He could come into the league and just be an irrelevant rotational piece, but he could be a high-level pass rusher. Some good tape that I have seen at Pittsburgh. 21 to the Tennessee Titans. The Taylor Lewan injury has shown that you've got to do something because that line has been a problem since he went out. So at number 21, former number 1 overall recruit in the nation, Broderick Jones, offensive tackle out of Georgia. This kid's been really good in his first year as a full-time starter. I do think he will go somewhere in the top 25. I don't know that they haven't gotten everything there is to get out of him, so he may not have that next gear. But he is a no doubt day one starter and would be the ultimate replacement for Taylor Lewan. 51, they add another weapon because outside of Traylon Burks, you just don't have a lot of those. Wide receiver Zay Flowers out of Boston College. He's one of the best deep threats in this draft. And I think it would allow you to continue to do the play action things with Derrick Henry. You've just got to have another weapon. You can't count on Nick Westbrook-Akina to be that guy, and we've seen that this year with the Tennessee Titans. And with a third-round pick, 85 overall, Cedric Van Pran, interior offensive lineman out of Georgia. This is more of a depth piece, but it's a depth piece that could play right away if you needed him to. Number 22 with my New York Jets, who are way better than I ever thought they would be this early in the Robert Saleh years. But there is a hole on that defense that's very obvious. It's currently being occupied by LaMarcus Joyner. And at number 22, I replace him with Brian Branch, the safety out of Alabama. Very versatile. I think Robert Saleh would really enjoy having this kid in the system. Just another malleable piece. And I do like the idea of having him over the top with Jordan Whitehead as your 2 safeties moving forward. 52, Noah Sewell, linebacker out of Oregon. I'm not as high on him as a lot of other people are, and I think the industry's starting to catch up on that. But in the right 4-3 system, which is what the Jets play, I do think he could come in, play right away, not necessarily be a C.J. Mosley replacement, but somebody next to Quan Alexander that can call the defense and develop along with you. C.J. Mosley's cap number next year is cap prohibitive, and so he may not be back in New York next year. With their last pick in this 3-round mock draft at 83, Ryan Hayes, offensive tackle out of Michigan. I mean, you hope Mekhi Becton comes back, but at this point, the injury history screams that he's not going to. So just another depth piece for when invariably you're in the same situation you were in this year. The other New York team, the New York Giants. Pick at number 23. It's become very obvious that Daniel Jones is going to be the quarterback of this team, for better or worse. And with that being the case, you're going to have to find a receiver that he can trust. And I do that at 23 with Jalen Hyatt, wide receiver out of Tennessee. This is the deep threat that this team needs. They haven't really had one of those. Sterling Shepard, he's just injured a lot. And so you need the guy you can count on. That's what you would get out of Jalen Hyatt at 23. 54, Steve Avila, interior offensive lineman from TCU. Can play all over the line. I think he's a plug-and-play guard. Could play he's played tackle at TCU, but I think that would be in a pinch in the NFL, but would be a nice depth piece at 54. And at 86, Sam Laporta, tight end out of Iowa. That's a kid that I just don't think you've seen how good he can be because of how bad that offense has been. 24 in the Miami Dolphins is forfeited because they talked to Tom Brady and Sean Payton and brought in neither one of them. Number 25, the Denver Broncos. How good do you feel right now? Just you feel good? Russell Wilson, worst trade of NFL hit. Okay. You need a quarterback. Straight up, you need a quarterback. This is not a guy I truly believe in, but I think you could have a lot of new decision makers in Denver. Number 24, Anthony Richardson, quarterback out of Florida. The good is intoxicatingly good. The bad is horrendously bad. You got to take a shot. You have limited draft capital. You cannot go into this next season with Russell Wilson and Brett Rippon. I know you're committed to him financially. He's been a disaster, and the quicker you move off of that, the better you will be. 66, edge rusher Zach Harrison. This is a kid that I'm way higher on than the vast majority of the industry. I think he can be a high-level edge, get into that rotation that they have, and even make that defense a little bit better. And at 72, Nick Brocker, offensive tackle and guard out of Ole Miss, can play virtually any position on the offensive line, and is somebody's going to get a hell of a value in him, and it would be a nice fit for the Denver Broncos right here. At 26, the Baltimore Ravens. They do that thing that the Baltimore Ravens always do. A player falls right into the lap of Baltimore, and they turn him into an all-pro. At 25, Isaiah Foskey, edge out of Notre Dame. I am not as wild about him as others are, but I do think in the right scheme, in the right system, he can become a hell of an NFL football player. You might just have to wait on it a year or two, and I'm not sure that the super high level is there, which is why he falls here for me, but finds a landing spot at 25 with the Baltimore Ravens. And then at number 90, Chase Brown, running back out of Illinois. He's never going to be the 3-down, do-it-all running back, but between the tackles in that offense, I think he has a great role in the NFL. He will be pushed down because he doesn't offer those ancillary things. In Baltimore, I'm just not that worried about it. I know they're going to roll with J.K. Dobbins at times. I know they're going to have Gus Edwards and the slew of other running backs. Chase Brown is a guy I know I can count on between the tackles. At 27, the Cincinnati Bengals. I've said this for so long that it's become a broken record. Jonah Williams is a guard, is a guard, is a guard. You need a tackle, and at 27, you take one with Jalen Duncan, the offensive tackle out of Maryland. Big, athletic, dancing bear type of a player, super athletic, and I think he has a great high side. You might have to wait on him a year. You might have to hide him at right tackle or whatever the case may be. I can't tell you he is a day one, no doubt starter at left tackle, but when you're picking at the back end of the first round, it is rare that you will find one of those. 57, Brandon Joseph, the safety out of Notre Dame. I'm not sure Jesse Bates is back with this team. I'm not sure how, and I think Daxton Hill is the replacement there, but Brandon Joseph would be a nice pairing with him in the back half of that secondary. The defense has been better than I thought it would be, and that's without Jesse Bates being everything I want him to be. 57, Brandon Joseph out of Notre Dame. 88, Dalton Kincaid, the tight end out of Utah. Depth piece behind Hayden Hurst, I think, would be a nice replacement in that C.J. Uzomah role, the do-everything tight end that has become very in vogue in the NFL. At 28, the Dallas Cowboys. This is look, I hate Dallas, and I'm not even gonna hide it. I hate the Dallas Cowboys with every fiber of my being, and it's because their fan base leads the NFL in misspelled death threats that I get from any NFL team, which is why it pains me at 27 to give them my favorite player. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. 27, Jared Verse, edge out of Florida State. This is the ultimate pairing with Micah Parsons, ultimate replacement to DeMarcus Lawrence. Nice rotational pieces first year, get him acclimated, and now you're getting into that your defense is as scary as you want to tell me that it is. 59, Henry To'o, linebacker out of Alabama. Kid started at Tennessee. He's been a tackle monster everywhere he has been, and I think he would fit nicely in this Dan Quinn system. He's not as scheme versatile as you would like him to be, but he is the tackle monster that Dan Quinn has needed for quite some time. And at 91, Riley Moss, cornerback out of Iowa. Nice replacement to Anthony Brown a year from now. Almost to the end of the first round, 29, the Kansas City Chiefs. This team doesn't need a lot, but I feel like they've made one really big draft mistake over the last few years, and that was Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You replace that at 28 with Jahmyr Gibbs, running back out of Alabama. This is the kid that is everything you were sold Clyde Edwards-Helaire would be, and he can actually run between the tackles. This is a scary piece to add to the Kansas City Chiefs. Very fast, very good receiver. 28, Jahmyr Gibbs. At 60, Zion Nelson, the offensive tackle out of Miami. This is the ultimate replacement to Orlando Brown. I cannot physically believe that they're going to pay him super, super high-level offensive tackle money because that's just not what he's been. Played on the franchise tag this year. He hasn't been a franchise left tackle. There wasn't one at 28. Zion Nelson makes sense at 60. At 92, a player that I thought would come out last year, didn't necessarily have the year I expected this year. Will McDonald, the fourth edge rusher out of Iowa State. This is the Frank Clark replacement in time. Him and George Karlaftis would be the edge rushers for Kansas City in the long term. Number 30, the Minnesota Vikings. Better than anybody could ever have imagined that they would be in the first year with Kevin O'Connell. One thing this team needs desperately is another weapon outside of Justin Jefferson. Adam Thielen is getting older. He's not the threat that he once was. And so at 30, Josh Downs, wide receiver out of North Carolina. It's a kid out of the slot that can threaten you over the top. Very, very good player. I covered personally here as an affiliate of the North Carolina Tar Heels. Do everything receiver, and everyone knew it was coming, and it didn't matter. Very talented, very much a slot receiver, which is why you can get him at the end of the first round, but would be a tremendous fit for Minnesota. At 93, Emil Ekiyor, offensive lineman out of Alabama. I think there is a higher side to him. We just haven't seen it yet. He needs to be developed, which is not something I often say about Alabama players, but I do feel that way about Ekiyor. At number 31, the Buffalo Bills. This team doesn't need much, but one big deficiency that I have seen is the interior of the offensive line. So at 30, Osiris Torrance, guard out of Florida. Guards are not super valuable in this league, but he is about as good a one as you will ever see coming to this league that's not named Quentin Nelson. Followed Billy Napier from Louisiana to Florida and just continued to be the road grader that he had been there. 62, Jordan Battle, the safety out of Alabama. You can see with the injuries to Hyde and Poyer this year how much that affects that Doug McDermott defense and how different things look when they're not out there. This is a third piece. He can also play in the slot. He's very versatile around the defense and would be a nice piece for Sean McDermott. At 64, Dontavian Wicks, wide receiver out of Virginia. I know you have Gabe Davis. I know you have Stephon Diggs. I'm getting afraid that Gabriel Davis is going to price himself out of Buffalo a year from now when he hits free agency, and this would be either a fourth receiver or the ultimate replacement to Gabe Davis, and can play some in the slot as well. All right, there's the first round on the screen. There are only 4 teams in the NFL that do not have a first-round pick of any kind. It's the LA Rams, New Orleans Saints, Cleveland Browns, San Francisco 49ers. As Miami traded – actually, Miami didn't have one either, so we have 5. I was wrong. They also, I think, only have 1 pick total. So we'll reel those off really quick, starting with the Los Angeles Rams. Their first pick at 34, I don't know what's going to happen with Matthew Stafford. I have to assume he's going to be back, but you need an offensive tackle of some kind because that line has been a disaster. So at 34, DeJuan Jones, offensive tackle out of Ohio State. That is the best player available and the best player available at a position of need. And at 67, Tuli Tuapolatu, defensive lineman out of USC. That's another one of those very Rams front three type of players. He's very scheme versatile, very multiple, can do a lot of things. Would be a nice addition to the Los Angeles Rams. The New Orleans Saints, you've got to do something at quarterback because you don't have one. Jameis Winston, Andy Dalton, keep going down the line. There's not a quarterback there. So at number 36, Hendon Hooker. Probably not going to be much of a threat year one. Might be back for the second half of the season, but he's an older guy that can come in and play right away. New Orleans is in trouble because there's just not a lot you can do. You've kicked the can down the road with the salary cap for so long that you almost have to do something like this and hope it works. And at 68, Ja'Kellen Roy, defensive tackle out of LSU. This is a player that I'm sure, have a really good file on with LSU being as close to New Orleans as it is. Talented player, talented defense. Just never been the pop player to me, but I think he certainly has a role in the NFL. The Cleveland Browns, only one pick in the first three rounds at 43. Gervon Dexter, defensive tackle out of Florida. One of the best interior defensive linemen in this draft. I just feel like he's going to be shoehorned into very specific kinds of defenses. Not going to provide a ton, I'm afraid, in the NFL as the big run clogger, but I think he can be good enough against the run and good enough against the pass to be a 3-down defensive tackle in this league, which is exactly what Cleveland needs. They have been murdered by the run all year long. The Miami Dolphins, 3 picks starting at 55. Jack Campbell, the linebacker out of Iowa. I think he fits in the scheme really nicely. I like him with either Miami, the Jets, or San Francisco, because that's the system that I think he needs to play in. Very versatile, very fast linebacker, just a do-everything kind of guy. 80, Tavondre Sweat, defensive tackle out of Texas. He is a house, and the tape has not always been phenomenal, but I feel like he was miscast at Texas. He will come into the NFL, be the run clogger, be that 350-pound nose tackle, and will be a value down the line. And at 87, Jalen Jones, cornerback out of Texas A&M, which is just another piece. Hopefully you get Xavier Howard and Byron Jones back healthy next year. The final team, the San Francisco 49ers. They don't have any picks. It's real easy to do San Francisco because they don't have any picks. I knew something was up because I kept looking at it going, I don't remember who I took for San Francisco. So that's it. That's Mullet's 3-round mock draft, number 4. 13 weeks into the NFL season. We'll bit this out team by team. Be sure to click that like button, the subscribe button, notifications, all those things, so you'll know every time that we go live. And as always, we're brought to you by Fred Anderson Nissan of Asheville, Ingles Supermarkets. Low prices, love the savings. Mullet out.